Hey guys, thanks for tuning in to the Straight Outta Prison podcast. Welcome to Season 2, Episode 5. I'm James K. Jones, and this is my story.
And I'm Haley Jones, and this is his story that has now become a part of my story. And as you like to say, it is now our story.
I got a text from a guy that he was basically trying to be on our podcast. And, I responded. I try to respond to everybody. I don't want to, discount anybody. But he said, I'm just waiting on her story to become your story. And I was like, well, bro, just stay tuned. But in episode 4, we talked about my first, get my feet wet with the church people. And, this whole idea of church. Because, the way I was raised, I was not interested in any of that. And just navigating through that. And now I'm still at Kilby. And I'm slated to go to St. Clair Correctional Facility, which there are 3 max camps in the state of Alabama: St. Clair, West Jefferson, and Atmore. And they sent me to a max camp because my crimes were armed robbery. So that's puts you in the top tier.
Not good.
Yeah, as far as security, you're a violent criminal. Even though I knew I was not a violent criminal, but that's how they classify you. So I was getting ready to go to St. Clair. That's where they told me I was going to go, but ended up staying at Kilby for 6 months, which is really unheard of.
So here's something that I think I've been actually thinking about since we recorded the last episode, and that is, and it's something we've touched on before in terms of, in the free world, as you call it, and as in the locked up world, that in both that there are cultures and subcultures.
It's 2 different worlds.
It's 2 different worlds, but it's the same in terms of people just creating these cultures depending on what they identify with.
Yeah.
And so, for example, you talked about in previous episodes, or whenever we talked about it, that you talked about, so people formed groups, whether it be the whites and the blacks, or where they're from,
and gangs.
Different cities and gangs.
Yeah.
So whichever group they identify themselves with, there are these subcultures that are created. Mm-hmm. And I find that so fascinating because I think that's also true. I've never been in prison, but that's also true.
Well, in prison, that's who you run with. You run with your people.
Right. Well, so, that's true outside, too.
It is. It's the same. It's the same. You run with your people, whoever your people are.
Yeah.
And there's something fascinating about that because, I've heard it said, you can measure your future in the sum total of the 5 people that you're closest to. Because the people that you relate to, that you hang around with, that you spend time with, you're going to start talking like them, acting like them, even believing like them. So,
and we tend to be drawn to people that, believe the same things or are going for the same things or whatever. But where I'm getting at with this is that since you got saved, and become a Christian, it's introduced this whole new subculture. Within the prison of people you were introduced in things that were happening, which is also true outside, but
it is.
And that's what I'm curious to learn more about is this Christian subculture within the prison life.
Well, my thing with that was I didn't even know that subculture existed.
Yeah.
When I was at BCI, there were people that did all that Jesus stuff, but I was not, I was going to be running from that. I've never been, at that time, I'd never been interested in any of that. I don't, I don't want to hear all that. Big O, one of my best friends, he would always go to chapel and he would say, I got to get my spirit fed because I'm spiritual. And I'll be like, well, whatever that means. Whatever that means, you just keep that to yourself because I'm not interested in none of that because I'm not a deep spiritual person. But then in the Montgomery County Jail, I had this experience with Jesus, and for me, it was real. It was not some religious experience. Something changed on the inside of me, and just trying to navigate through that while I was at Kilby, because there was a lot of for some reason, there was more religious stuff going on in Alabama than there had been going on in Florida.
See, that's interesting too to me.
Well, Alabama's in the Bible Belt.
Yeah.
Florida is out of all the states in the Union. If you look at Georgia, Alabama, Mississippi, Tennessee, we pretty much believe the same, act the same, would do the same things. But Florida is like its own country almost.
Yeah.
Like Florida, I love Florida, just by the way.
Well, I'm from there, so you should.
Well, yeah, got me a Florida girl. But in Alabama, it was much different in that, like Christianity, following Jesus, all that stuff was the norm. So, and there were so many, there at Kilby, there were so many like ministries coming in trying to help people. It was just, it was flooded with all that stuff. And
so
it was
people
confusing.
trying to help, I mean, so you're saying different like religious sects or different like, I mean, because...
Well, in the Christian world, it would be like denominations. You might go... I've explained this. I had a friend that I tried to explain this to that didn't understand, like, growing up. Because I was growing up spiritually there at Kilby. Like, it's like a spiritual, like, schizophrenia. Because, like, if you have an experience with Jesus and you join a church, they teach you stuff and you learn. But in prison, we got taught all the different... left, right, up, down, all around. And it was like, and that was just on Sunday. So you might have somebody come in on Sunday morning to do Sunday school that would tell you, God is love. He loves you. He cares for you. He's got a plan for your life. And you'd be like filled with hope. And then you go to the 11 o'clock service and they would say like, no, he just wants you to suffer. You just got to hold on till you get to Beulah land. And
so these are what, like different denominations or different,
Yes.
like they believe different things and they came in to try to
Yes.
help, but they're saying two totally different things.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, they're telling their like version of what they've experienced. And for me, it was always a life thing. It wasn't like a religious thing. So it was tough to navigate through.
Okay, just pause really quick.
Okay.
You use the word religious a lot, and maybe not now. I don't know if this is the time, but I would like to hear, like, unpack what you mean when you say that.
Well, religion for me is like, it's people that create a system or a pathway or like a track to getting to God. And what I had learned by the time I was like 6 months in, so I was not like a Bible scholar or anything like that, but I understood from the scriptures and from what I'd experienced was that God did that for me. Like, I don't even have to worry about that. He did it for me. So I just need to receive the gift and move on. Like, he's already paid for my sins. He's already fulfilled every Old Testament demand. All that was nailed to the cross. He did it. Jesus did it when he died, and he paid the price. And so there's no reason for me to go back and try to pay the price.
So coming back to the question about religious people,
Mm-hmm.
so you feel like the religious people, and from your definition of it, are people that feel like they need to do something or not do something.
Work for it.
Right, to get...
Work for it. And for me, I couldn't
God.
work for it. I mean, I couldn't because I was too far gone. Like, I had committed too many, like, grievous, like...
Right, you knew
crimes,
that
like-
if it was up to you, it was...
Yeah,
the
I'm
nail
out.
was in the coffin.
I'm out. Like, whatever
Yeah.
needs to happen here, I'm out. Like, I've done too much. Because, I mean, I had done
That's
so many...
true, yeah.
I had so many, like, secret things that I'd done. Like, I go back to, my cell partner, Valenza. He was studying Buddhism, and he was telling me about karma. And, like, whatever you put out is whatever you get back. And I was like, oh... shit. I'm screwed. Like,
That ship has sailed for me, and it's not going to be
I've done
good.
too many things, so there was no redemption for me. There was no
hope.
hope, no help. But when I met Jesus, he let me know, and not just like through some ooty booty kind of experience, but in studying the scriptures, he did it for me. He took care. He paid the bill. It's like if you go out to eat. Your dad. I never knew you. I met your dad one time before he passed away.
Yeah.
But I've been fascinated with hearing stories of Grant Hobart because he is
dad.
the grandfather of my children.
Yeah.
And he was very generous. And when you went out to a meal with him, he would always pick up the tab. He would pay the bill. And so it would be like Jesus paid the bill for me. He paid the tab. Like, he paid the tab, he paid the tip, everything there's nothing for me to pay. I just have to receive the gift and use it to be a blessing to other people.
Well,
And
you've made this very personal and have gotten me emotional when you
I'm
say
sorry.
that. No, but to me, it just communicates what I hear you saying is that for you, it was very personal. And you feel like
Well,
something was done for you
it
that you
was.
had already ruined and could never have done for
I
yourself.
couldn't redeem myself.
Yeah.
And I couldn't, there was no way. I mean, you can take that on yourself. Like when you were out at the Brios in Birmingham with your dad and he paid the bill and paid the tip, and then you go try to pay more, that would have offended him, right?
I would never do that.
Well, you wouldn't, but some people would. Like I need to figure out how I can, compensate.
Yeah.
But it's the same with God. Like Jesus paid the price. He paid the bill. He got the tab. It's paid. Like that was his last words on the cross. Was it? I think it said it. He said it in Aramaic. He said "Tetelestai," which meant it is finished. The bill is paid. Like it's done. We're done. Mm-hmm. And so for me, it was okay. I'm good. It's done. Let's move on and see what do you got for me now.
But what's interesting about that, so you were of that mindset, but yet there was all these, I guess, people and groups coming into the prison.
Oh, they flood the prison.
So, which was not only true for you, I mean, which is true for everyone. That's why I said it's almost like how I see it. It's like this whole new subculture that was probably there before, but you just didn't know it because you didn't care. And
that was not my world.
But now you become aware because now it's almost become introduced to you. So tell us a little bit, about some of that new subculture as you were experiencing it coming in.
Well, there's a prison brotherhood there was in Kilby.
A brotherhood, what is the brotherhood?
Like the church, the church folks.
Okay.
But I had a huge problem with, and I felt like I had like this new, like, conscience, and I felt like that God was like, okay, look, you got to give them a chance. Like these are my people. And so I would try, but I would get so annoyed with these, like, especially like, I had a problem with the inmates. I had a problem with the people coming in because I was such a skeptic. My problem with the inmates was there were so many, like remember when I told you when I had experience with Jesus and I told my mom, like, she was freaked out, like, you can't do the jailhouse religion thing. That's bad. And you don't play with God. And I was like, I'm not playing with anything. Like, I've had an experience with Jesus and it's real. And I didn't really understand what she was talking about until I got to Kilby. And I met a lot of people that had like the jailhouse religion version, because I met people that would, they did this, like, they had these, like, I don't know what you call it, like, they're things that they did every day. They would gather together and make these long prayers, and they would pray, and they would be loud and obnoxious and just get on everybody's nerves. And then it was like they were coming against people. Like they would pray against the spirit of the police and the spirit of the, all of the inmates. And it was just offensive. And I didn't want it. I tried. I went to a couple of those prayer circles. But, I did one or two of the prayer circles where they went around, you pray for the prostitutes in Italy and the homeless people in India. And I just couldn't. I was just like, this is not me.
But not having that experience, from my perspective and what I think when you say that, I can somewhat understand, because it feels like if you're in a situation where you're not free and whatever all these people's situation are, bottom line, they're in prison and you cling to something either to be a part of or to hope for,
it's a hope.
Whether it's real or not real. It just makes, I can see how I would want to probably attach myself to something that I felt like was meaningful on some level.
Well, I didn't want anything to do with that. I went through 2 or 3 weeks of that, and I was like, this is not me. It's not what I'm doing. And there was so much judgment and criticism and condemnation and all this stuff. And really what helped me was I started asking people questions. Like, so you're the inmate pastor, you're leading this movement here. Tell me about that. And I remember this one guy in particular.
Did you say inmate pastor?
Oh, there were so many inmate pastors.
Obviously, I've never even heard you say that term, like inmate
They called
pastor.
themselves inmate pastors.
So they just said, okay, I'm going to be an inmate pastor now.
Well, they would
so
say,
everyone call me pastor.
I'm called of God to be a pastor and all stuff. And I was like, well, what does that even mean? Like, you know, if you read it in the Bible, it means that you have people that you're leading, but nobody's following you. It was just annoying. But I remember this one guy in particular, I was trying to understand, trying to figure it out. And I questioned him, like, so you came to prison and you had this experience with Jesus and now, you know, everything's good? And he was like, oh, no, I've always been saved. So I was like, really? And what I came to find out was that he had been in and out of prison like 7 or 8 times. And so I was like, how you come to prison and have experience with Jesus and get out and then come back? Like, how that doesn't make any sense. And so he was like, well, you know, usually when I get out of prison, the last time I got out, I got off the bus and, you know, I found a girl and, you know, I was having sex and then I was he called it whoring. That's what he said. And there was no change. It was just like a religious thing.
So this speaks to, again, I feel like what I said in the beginning of the culture thing, because the culture, I guess, I should look up the definition of culture, but it's like where you're at. And clearly that subculture within the prison is something that he identified with or found some kind of, so he must have gotten something out of it to continue.
What's the way to survive in prison?
Coming back, yeah.
Well, I found out later on, I didn't find this out till I went to my permanent camp, but later on I found out, like, you had the Bloods, the Crips, the white supremacists, the black supremacists, Muslims, you had the Christians. And they were all like, it was like a gang. And I'm like, I'm not going to be a part of that. I'm not interested in that. That's not my thing. I'm not doing that. I'm not doing that. And it was, in some ways it was a way to be protected and it was a way to like cover.
Right.
And, just let me say, I don't know if I've said this yet. I talked about Kilby. Going to prison in Florida was an experience. But the way that the prisons are ran in the state of Florida, it's like the COs and the prison is like military. And it's very, you know, you have to toe the line. You have to do what they ask you to do. But they protect you and take care of you. Like, you don't have to worry about the things that I found that you had to worry about in Alabama. In Alabama, it's just like it's like the Wild West. It's awful. I mean, we'll get into that later, but I've never see anything like that. So a lot of people would adopt this Christian Brotherhood thing like as a gang, as a way to be protected. And for me, it was not any of that. I had an experience with God. I found life, and I was trying to follow that life. And it would lead me away from the like normal inmate Jesus
cultures
people.
Yeah.
And so what ended up happening was we created our own culture within a culture. And it was not like, well, I wasn't like trying to go out and like, you know, because I was like, I remember my meemaw told me one time, I always knew you were going to be a preacher. And I was like, I'm not signing up to be no preacher. I've had an experience with Jesus and I'm going to keep following that, but I'm not trying to do any of that stuff.
Don't try to tell James K. Jones what he's going to be.
Well, don't tell me I'm going to be a preacher because at that time I only...
Don't tell you you're going to be anything, let's be honest.
Well, that's true. My staff, when I had Cairo's, my staff...
Which is a restaurant.
Yeah, I'm sorry. The people, they would tell me, you know, if we want you to do something, we have to let you think it's your idea before we get it done. And if you think it's your idea, it'll happen. If you think it's our idea, it won't happen.
Actually, this is a funny little side note. I don't want to go too far off, but before we were married, and Denise, who actually introduced us, who was your manager, I guess.
She was the manager in Garnett and Birmingham.
So I remember like following on social media that y'all were going to start a buffet and y'all were taking submissions and suggestions, I guess, of what to call it.
Yeah.
And so like everyone was like, oh, you know, what do you call it? And she was like, thank you so much. We got so many ideas. But then when she made the announcements of like, we're going to name it, I think it was the Delicious Goodness Bar.
It was the DG Express.
She's like, which of course was James's suggestion. So thank you for all your input. But bottom line, James.
Well, I mean,
I just thought that was so funny because it's the same.
I don't think. I mean, there's like a stubbornness that you can see from other people, but I feel like I have to follow my own way, and it's not even for me, it's not even going to be my way. It's going to be whatever, the plan is for me.
Right.
Like, I don't need to
agree with that.
I don't need to follow the plan for nobody else because that's your plan. So, I mean, there was a lot, and maybe that.
And then you got married.
Oh, yeah. We'll get into that for real. But at this time, I didn't want that. I got so annoyed with that, and it was just like, y'all are just spinning your wheels, and I'm not into spinning my wheels. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So tell me, let's talk about some of the things though during this time at Kilby with this new subculture, things that impacted you in a positive way that were, or I guess positive and negative. You could give me an example of both that.
Well, I guess we should start with the negative. Like my filter as far as like people that did ministry and people that were, like preachers and stuff like that was all negative.
You mean outside of prison or inside of prison?
Both.
Okay.
Because I always felt like they had like some like motive, like something they were trying to get from me. And, growing up, it was money. Because, I grew up during the 80s. You probably don't remember this because you were born in 1980. But the televangelist thing was a big like deal during that time. Like people on TV like preaching Jesus. But then at the end, they would always want your money. And I remember being a little kid thinking, why do they need my money? I mean, they're driving around in all these Mercedes and, they're making it happen. Why do they need my money? But my mom's number 3 husband, his name was Mitchell. He was the redneck I talked about. My mom, she says it was my fault that she married him because they were living together. They bought a trailer, and my mom would say, "It's a new trailer," and I'm like, "It's still a trailer.
It's a trailer.
We still living in a trailer." But he had a sister, Martha Jo, that I loved her. She was so sweet. So she was so good to me, and I guess she was like my step aunt. You would call her my step aunt.
Yeah.
I don't know. They weren't married that long, so it was not that really. But this was during the time of the Jim and Tammy Faye Baker, like the PTL craze. And she was a follower of PTL. Like, she gave them her money. And I think, I don't know this for sure, but I think, like, her family bought one of their cabins in their Jesus world they built in North Carolina, wherever they were. And they would get in these arguments, like these heated arguments, because he was anti any of that. And she would like go on. He's a man of God. Like, he's preaching the gospel. He's saving people. And he would say, well, why does he need your money? Like, why are you sending him all your money? And why is his wife up on TV with all those diamonds and all the flashes? And she's like, oh, Mitchell, hush. Those are cubic zirconiums. Them are not real diamonds. And, like, why is he driving a Mercedes? God is blessing him. Somebody gave him that Mercedes. And just watching them arguing, I couldn't stand him, so I wanted her to be right, But then the whole Jim and Tammy Baker scandal broke, and, it was on every news channel, Saturday Night Live and all stuff. And it just jaded me against any kind of, like, ministry or anybody, I just didn't trust any of that stuff. And so you'd have these people coming in, and I was at a place where I felt like I needed to give people a chance, and I needed, it was just, it was in my heart to, like, try to move past that and forgive and love and do all things. So I found Christian radio during this time because I didn't have a job at Kilby because I was in transit. So I didn't have anything to do. So I developed my own little disciplines. I would wake up in the morning, do my prayers, and then I found Christian radio. And in Montgomery, there was like 5 or 6 Christian radios. And they would do like, one of them was like old time gospel. One of them was like African American, gospel. And then one of them actually did like this block in the morning for like 3 or 4 hours where they did different teachings.
God bless the Bible Belt.
Yeah.
All things are available.
It was good, but so I would get my notebook out and my Bible, and I would spend 2 or 3 hours in the morning listening to these preachers, and then I would take notes, and that would be what I studied in the afternoon. But there was this one pastor, his name was David Jeremiah, and he was a very good Bible teacher. Actually, I don't think he was like one of those radio preachers. I think they actually just taped his church stuff.
Is he still like alive and
he is
stuff? Okay.
He came out with a series that he was doing on the book of Joseph, And I was fascinated with Joseph because of remember when I was in lockup and was looking at life without parole, and Joanne Quillette wrote me a letter and told me, study the book of study about Joseph. Your life sounds
Which
like
was the chef you worked for, wife.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so I had read that story 7 or 8 times by this time, and I was fascinated with the story, and I felt like there was some parallel between him and me. And David Jeremiah, who I listened to every day, announced that he was going to start an exhaustive study on the life of Joseph. And I was so excited.
Keyword exhaustive.
Yeah, no, it's going to be
I'm just kidding.
It was going to be like 3 or 4 weeks
of
teaching on the life of Joseph. And he wanted you to have this companion study guide that went with what he was teaching. So I wrote him a letter, like a very sincere letter. I told him my story. And I asked if I could have a copy of the workbook. So they sent me back a letter.
Because inmate wanted to study Joseph.
I did.
Inmate Jones wanted to study
I was
Joseph.
interested. I wanted it. So I'm pretty sure he didn't send me the letter, but somebody on his staff sent me the letter. Mm-hmm. And they basically put a little Jesus tract in there and told me that I need to confess my sins and believe that Jesus Christ died and was buried and raised and that I would be saved. And they said, that's all we got for you. We don't share our materials with people in prison.
Okay, but what'd they really say? Did they say, we don't share our materials with people in prison?
That's what they said.
That's what they said?
Yes, it was, but that hurt me so deeply. It turned me off from any of that.
That's hard for me to believe. I mean, I believe you, but just it just sounds crazy to me that someone would say oh, we don't share that with people in prison. It sounds very...
Well, no, I don't know if they said, I think they said they don't share it for free.
Oh, for free.
And my thing was...
Show me the money.
I can tell my mama to order this for me. I mean, it's not that big a deal about spending the $50 or whatever you want for your little material.
You were just excited and told them and said you were following along and wanted to be a part. And they were like, no go for you unless you can send me some money.
It crushed me. But but even to this day, that has always bothered me. And that's been 25 years ago. That has always bothered me is... I think it was 2 or 3 months ago. With Amazon, you can find anything you want. Mm-hmm. I thought, I wonder if that Joseph Study companion guide is on Amazon. And I looked it up, and it was. And I actually clicked on it to order it. And then I was like, David Jeremiah will never get my money. They will never get...
Am I sensing some bitterness here?
Yes.
Well, here's the question.
I probably need to forgive David Jeremiah. Okay, Jesus, I forgive David Jeremiah. But the way that letter made me feel... It was basically, I've heard the saying, you'll forget what people do, you'll forget what people say, but you'll never forget how people make you feel.
Yeah, that's
true. And
true.
he made me feel like I was nothing. Like, you may be part of Jesus. Jesus might have redeemed you and saved you, but you are not going to get my study guide.
You're not getting no Joseph workbook from us unless you pay the money. So my question is, did you still listen to the study and follow along?
No. I was done with it after that. I actually went through. I'm not listening to Christian radio. They're all fake.
James.
No, I'm not saying that now. I'm saying that's where I was then.
Yeah.
So, but it actually ended up helping me because it drove me into studying for myself.
That's good.
And I had an officer there it was the North Dorm. They called it the Chapel Dorm because it was next to the chapel. But it was better than the other dorms because there weren't so many people. I had 50 guys in my dorm. There were 50 guys in another dorm. We shared a yard. So what ended up happening was similar to what happened in the Montgomery County Jail, but not quite as intense, was I just started studying for myself. Other people started coming along. 2 turned into 5, turned into 10, turned into 20. And next thing you know, we've got this big group of people that are following Jesus and studying that are not a part of the normal, Christian Brotherhood. And I had an officer there. I wish I could remember his name because he was so helpful for me during that time. He would spend 2 or 3 hours with me a day. He would come in. He had to hide his Bible in a briefcase because he was a correctional officer. His job there was not to be doing the Jesus work. But he would sit down with me and study with me and help me navigate through and understand. He would bring me books.
So this is the positive side. So the David Jeremiah thing was a negative experience.
It was hard.
Now this correctional officer that you don't remember his name was part of the positive experience.
He mentored me. He taught me. In a way, when you come to Jesus in prison, you don't have a pastor. I mean, you have a chaplain, but usually they're we'll get into that later, but they're not really like pastoring you.
Another day, another podcast.
he was the guy that was like helping me navigate through. And I remember that our group had turned into such a large group that I said, I think I want to do a Bible study. And so he was like, well, let me help you. And there was something about the process of that. It was kind of like cooking. Like, because, I love cooking. I always had. It was like, I love the process of studying, putting together outlines, and then helping people understand, helping people get it. And my first Bible study, he helped me put it together. And it was called Fear or Faith, Who's Living in the Room? And it was basically like the room of your heart. Like, you can either have faith or you can have fear, but both of them can't be there. And he told me that he would, if I could write it all out, he would have it typed up and put into like where I think actually it was his idea. He said people learn more if they have something they can hold in their hands and study by. And so I wrote it out, and I was so excited. I gave it to him, and he was like, no, come here. This is too complicated. Like, nobody understands these big words. Like, you need to dumb this down to where they can understand. And it offended me, but at the same time, it helped me learn. And I reworded everything when we came back, and it was very effective. I mean, and then what he was doing was actually, like, he wasn't supposed to be doing that, but he snuck into the shift commander's office and made me copies, and I had my first Bible study, and it was good. I mean, I was rocking and roll. I was living my best life.
I have a random question. Do you think these things were going on with like other people at the Florida prison or other places you'd been that you just were unaware of?
Yeah, I was anti that.
Like, so you think these, and this is, I mean, I just don't know, but like these subcultures of what you were doing, not exactly, but people were doing similar things and having the subculture and the other prisons you were part of. Yeah.
There was not in that numbers.
Okay.
Because in Florida there was so much like different religions that flooded. Like you had like Muslims and Buddhists and Jesus followers and
Baptists there wasn't that
Catholics.
In Alabama?
No, it was pretty much Catholics and Muslims. I mean, not Catholics. Baptists, there's a small amount of Catholics and then like Muslims.
Okay.
Yeah. But that turned into, like, getting to understand that turned into a white-black thing. And
in Florida, you mean?
No, in Alabama. In Kilby during this time.
Okay.
And it was actually one of my most, I guess, like, complicated times was because there were not a lot of white people that were, like, following Jesus, like, sincerely following Jesus at Kilby. So I was in the minority in prison anyways, but in the Christian Brotherhood, I was very much in the minority. And it was weird because, in Florida, I was never in the, I'm not going to be white, black, or Hispanic. I'm just a person.
So what made you in the minority then?
Because we had like 40, 50 guys in our group, and there was only like 5 white people. And I didn't really see it that way. Like, it didn't bother me. Like, I felt like I had a new, like, perspective, new life, and I was just doing my thing. And it was what it was. But you had these groups in there, and I seemed to be getting the wrath of both of the groups. There was this group of white people, they called themselves Christian Identity, which I'd never heard of any of this stuff. I didn't know any of it existed.
I've never heard of it.
Well, it's some religion that is like, they're like based like in North Alabama. And it's basically they believe that Jesus was white and the white race was the supreme race and everybody else was inferior to them. White supremacy. Basically, it was white supremacy. But they had wrapped it up in like this religion of like the scriptures and all that stuff. Which for me made no sense because, I'm a student of history. I understand like the Jews were neither white nor black. They're kind of in between. Kind of weird. But, and then at the same time there was like the polar opposite of that was the black supremacists, and they called themselves Muslim 5%ers. And it was basically like the black people are the chosen race of God, and then everybody else is not. And, white people are blue-eyed devils and all stuff. Mm-hmm. And it came to a head one time. We were doing a Bible study, and it was a very, like, sincere, like, we're following Jesus, trying to figure this thing out. And we were like in the middle of the dorm, and it was bothering me because I looked up and I had these white people, like with their tattoos and their Nazi symbols and all this stuff, and the way that they were looking at me, and they had approached me and said like very like evil things to me, like, you know, using the N-word and stuff like that. And they didn't bother me because I'm doing what I'm doing. I don't care what you're doing. But in prison, you got to be cautious because I'm in prison. Like they can do something. I can, like, they can physically harm me. Mm-hmm. So it was scary. But they were looking at me. They were on like the left side of the dorm, crowded around the bunk, looking at me crazy. And we were just having a little Bible study. And then, but I looked over to the right, and there was the group of the black supremacists or the 5%ers or whatever, and they were looking at me the same way. And the white people were upset with me that I was spending time with the African American brothers, and the black people, the 5%ers, were looking at me like I was leading their black brothers astray or something. I don't know. And it was like I got a clarity. Like I don't even know how to say it, but I just like saw it. They're the same. Y'all are the same. Like y'all are white people feeling like y'all are better than everybody, and y'all are black people feeling like y'all are better than everybody, but it was the same like mentality or spirit behind that, but it was causing them to kill each other.
Literally.
They were at war all the time. And it's scary, but I realized like I'm not part of any of that. I'm not in any of that.
Real quick, I don't know if you've said this before, forgive me if you have, but the 5%ers, why do you call them, like, what was that their name, or that's what they call themselves?
Well, I didn't call them that. They call themselves that.
Okay.
It's a sect of Islam. You know, if you go back and look at, like, if you watch the Malcolm X movie, The Malcolm X Life, he was a 5%er.
Oh, okay.
And it was like the Elijah Muhammad, all that, you know, the white people were the enemy, all the things. But, you know, Malcolm X went to Mecca, where, you know, Islam is like...
No, I don't know that.
That could be another podcast.
Okay.
And stuff. But he realized, like, whatever they were feeding me in America, this is not right. I mean, so anyways. But I felt like I was, like, receiving the wrath of the white people, and I was receiving the wrath of the black people, and I didn't like it. I did not like it.
That's a terrible feeling.
Well, it was scary, too, because when you're in prison, you know, your main, like, thing is to be safe, and I was not safe, and I wasn't trying to make myself unsafe, because I had learned, you know, at BCI, like, all the rules, like, but after I had my experience with Jesus, I had to lay aside all those rules and start following him.
So you just realized, though, that your actions were making kind of you an enemy of both camps.
Yeah. And It was scary. It was scary, but it didn't, you know how I'm a little stubborn. You know, if I feel like
just a little.
No, but if I feel like I'm right, like I'm all in. I'm gonna push through.
Oh, I know.
So we pushed through, and we kept doing what we're doing. And basically, what I saw during that time was that people's lives were being changed, and they were finding hope and healing. And
so it was really just like solidifying what you felt like you knew already.
Oh yeah. I didn't let that sway me. If anything, like the white people coming at me and the black people coming at me made me want to follow Jesus even more. Because I understood, like, he's not white or black. Like, we're all created in the image of God. Mm-hmm. We all come from Adam and Eve.
Yeah.
Like, we make up all this stuff, and really there's a force behind that, and that's the enemy that is pushing that agenda.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to be a part of that agenda. I'm not.
So you were basically pushing through all the negative and the subcultures, following what you felt like was true and real. And I was your story.
I was sincere. I mean, I was, but it's weird because Kilby was such a weird, like, coming out of Florida, coming into Kilby. Kilby was such a backward, never seen anything like that.
Well, because it was transitional, what you said. Like, I mean, it was like people were in transition.
But the Alabama Department of Corrections, even in 2021, they are stuck in, like, 1950. Like, the way they...
Still or then?
Oh, still.
Okay.
You know, I've done prison ministry. I know. I've been in and out of prisons. You know, I was out of prison for 2 months when they invited me back in. I know what they do. And it's just bad. Like the Alabama Department of Corrections is one of the worst in the nation. I mean, I think Louisiana may be the only ones that might even compare. But the contrast between Florida, which was more like military. They ran their prisons like very. They had rules, they had guidance, and you did everything according to what your protocol, what you're supposed to do. In Alabama, they warehouse human beings, and it's not good.
Yeah.
So, but I think my biggest relationship I made, besides that one officer that was kind of mentoring me, was an inmate. His name was Eddie Foster, and he was at Kilby for a medical procedure. So he had been, I think by that time, he had been in prison for like 10, 15 years.
Oh, wow.
And he was raised Muslim, and he grew up in the 5%er, like that hateful, the white people's the enemy and all that stuff. And
was he black or white? Was he black?
He was black. He was
I just
African.
need to clarify. I needed to get a visual in my mind. Okay.
But to me, he was just my brother.
Yeah.
Like because he was good people. But he was a Muslim. He had some violent crimes. I think he had a life sentence. Like he was not looking to get out ever. And he went to Cairo's weekend, which we'll cover Cairo's a little bit later.
Just give a little bit of what that is.
Cairo's weekend is a prison ministry where they come in and they spend 3 days with men, and they get like the draw is they feed you really good because the food is so bad in Alabama. Food is it's way worse than Florida. And then they basically like share the good news of Jesus and try to get people to come to Jesus. But people go for the food. He went for the food, and his story was that when he went to the Cairo's weekend, he was trying to offend the guy that was at his table, and he was like insulting him, like everything he could to try to just dog him out. And he would like look at the guy and say, "You don't understand, I'm a Muslim." And the guy was like, "So? Well, Jesus loves Muslims? What are you talking about?" And he could not offend this guy. And it caused him to have a conversion. And he had to come to Jesus, like a real experience like I did. And it changed everything about him. And he was a leader. Like he was
like a natural leader.
Yes, he was. And I met a guy later on at another camp, and I said the name of Eddie Foster. And this guy like got violently upset with me, like, "Eddie Foster ain't saved." And I said, "Yes, he is. Like, he might not have been saved when you knew him, but when I met him, he was following Jesus. Like, he got it." And he helped me understand, like, the authority of God's word, how to not get caught up in the religious stuff, and just, have my personal relationship with Jesus and study the scriptures and learn and grow and all things. And it was good. It was good. That was really good.
And he just happened to be there at the same time you were there.
He was only there I think he was there for a couple months because,
And how long were you at Kilby total?
I was at Kilby 6 months, which is unheard of. Like, you never, the average stay at Kilby is 2 weeks. And I was there for 6 months, and it had something to do with my, like, pending cases. But, like, in hindsight, I look at that was such a huge gift for me because it helped me, like, establish myself, not with, like, any, like, organization, but within myself, like what I believed, because there were so many people that came at you, like the inmates, the people coming in, like they were always trying to come at you and tell you need to believe this, you need to believe that. And I was like, you know what? I don't care what you say. I'm going to believe Jesus, and I'm going to believe whatever is written in his word. And that's what I'm running after, because there were so many like conflicts. I remember one of the first ones was this, Holy Spirit, like, do you speak in tongues? And I was like, I do not.
People probably don't even know what speaking in tongues mean. A lot of people listening.
Yes, when the Holy Spirit came upon people in the Book of Acts, like they spoke in other tongues, but they.
You mean like it sounded like a different language?
They spoke in different languages.
Yeah. But
there was a whole like religion that was created around that, and a lot of people were there that would come in and try to teach you that, and I just was like, if it ain't real, I'm not doing it. So, and then like, do you believe in the Trinity and all this stuff? And I was like, I don't know. I mean, I don't even know what you're saying. Like, I believe in whatever the Bible says. That's what I believe in. And so I'm just going to go with that, and you do whatever you want. And
It's crazy to me, though, that you had this, like, just sudden, I guess this was the change in your heart, but just sudden, like, belief in whatever this particular book said, when before you were, like, tearing out pages, like smoking marijuana out of the pages, and then all of a sudden it was like
it was
it was your ride or die, basically.
Well, before that, it was nonsense to me.
Right.
But after that, it became my life, and it still is my life.
I mean, I just find that, like, I mean, to me, that is a miracle in and of itself, that you go from just a non-care and, like, this is literally like an empty notebook that I can burn and make cigarettes to smoke out of, to
it wasn't cigarettes.
I believe whatever this book says. I mean, that's an extreme.
Okay, here's the difference. I can tell you the difference. It's when you meet Jesus and you meet his spirit and he makes you spiritually alive, then his words become alive because he's the one that wrote it. Mm-hmm. Even though it was written by over 40 men or 40 people over thousands of years, the word of God is alive and it will change your life, but not because of a philosophy, but because of the power that holds within it. And I learned that during that time. And it's not, it didn't become like a dogma or a denomination or any of that to me. It was and really, like, you couldn't argue that with me because it changed my life.
Right, which is true for anyone. You can't argue if someone's telling their own story. Like, you can't argue with someone's story. Like, this is...
Yeah, you can argue over the, like, oh, the Bible, this, blah, 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 all that stuff, but it changed my life. And it changed my life then, but, like, going forward, there's many, we can go on and on about that. But
was there any, like, crazy things that happened to you, like... in terms of that, like...
Well, during this season, I remember one time during this time, I got, like, I think I had the flu. I didn't know it was the flu, but I got really sick, and I'd been almost 4 years without any sickness other than, I had my thing with my neck where I had a problem with that, and then the miracle of the penicillin being delivered to me. But I got, like, sick where I needed my mama. No, I mean, when we first got married, remember one of the first times we got married after I got sick? And
Lord have mercy.
But I felt
like I thought I had married a grown man. I mean, I thought.
Well, but the problem was you weren't taking care of me the way I needed to be taken care of.
OMG, this is the for real material again.
You got mad because I said, look, if you can't help me the way I need to be helped, I need you to call my mama and you need to get her up.
And I said, call your mama. If that's what you need, because I'm not dying.
but
it's time to put your big boy panties on.
Well, you have babies now. You understand. Like, nobody takes care of you like your mama. Okay.
We're just going to pause that and say ... And
okay.
We'll continue.
But anyways, let's bring us back to 1997. I'm at Kilby, and I think it was the flu. I was sick. Like, I was very sick, and I needed my mama, but my mama couldn't come to me. And I was praying, and I felt like Jesus said, I want you to go to the commissary, and I want you to get 7 cans of orange juice, and I want you to drink every one. And it was these little Donald Duck cans of orange juice that I don't even think they sell those anymore. This was...
I feel like I have a visual for them, but I'm not sure why. But I feel like I know what you're talking about.
They were little skinny cans, and I went...
And they were metal, hard metal, yeah.
And they didn't taste that good. But I said, I need 7 cans of orange juice, and they looked at me like, okay. But, I mean, I bought them, and I sat there in the cafeteria there, and I downed the 7 cans. I went back to bed, put my covers over my head, and by lunchtime, I started sweating, and I felt better. I was better. And so I was telling people about it, and there was like this one brother.
Brother, I like how you call him a brother.
Well, I loved him, but he was very dogmatic in what he believed. And he was telling me, like, you saying the orange juice made you well, the orange juice healed you. The orange juice don't heal, Jesus heals. And I was like, look, bro, I don't know what you're talking about, but I felt like Jesus told me to get the orange juice and drink it, and I did, and now I'm better. So you don't argue with results. Like, argue with ideas. Don't argue with results. I'm better. I'm healed. I'm better. I don't know how that happened, but it happened. So move on, nerd. But there was a lot of stuff like that. But then there was this one time I was reading the book of Daniel, which was an Old Testament book that I wasn't really like fond of reading the Old Testament beyond like the book of Genesis, because it was all those laws and all that stuff in between. Like, that's not for me. And I understood that. But the book of Daniel was fascinating to me because he was carried away captive into a foreign country. And I felt like I'd been carried away captive into a foreign country. And he would have visions from God. And I was just like, well, if he can have visions, I can have visions. And so I was under my covers one night praying. And I just read the book of Daniel, and it was like God was like opening up to Daniel the spiritual universe, like what's really happening. And I was like, Jesus, I know that, you're not supposed to ask for signs and all these things, but like whatever you did for Daniel, I know you can do it for me. So if you could do that for me, like if you could just show me some of that stuff, like this universal like stuff, like if I could just get a touch from you, then it would really help me. It would help me grow in my faith, and I would really appreciate it. And I was so sincerely praying to Jesus, and under my covers there on my little prison bunk, it was like God just reached down and touched my face. And I felt it, and I was like, whoa, like what's happening? And it was like touch, and then it was like touch, touch, touch. It was so weird. I was like, my mind was just totally like blown. And I think that lasted all of like 20 seconds before I realized that God did not take his finger and touch my face in the North Dorm of Kilby Correctional Facility, but there was a roach crawling on my face. It was a roach, and it wasn't a little roach. It was one of those big roaches, like the cockroaches that come in from the outside. Well, Kilby was not.
Oh, that's so nasty.
It was gross, but I learned. And I rolled out of I was on the top bunk, and I rolled out and was like screaming, and people were like, what's wrong with you? And I was like, well, there's a roach on my face. But I learned after that not to ask for signs. Like, I don't need signs. I'm just gonna believe and run after you and follow you and all. But it was crazy. But during this time, I got really connected to Eddie Foster, and he was at St. Clair, which was the prison that I was slated to go to.
Okay, yeah. So he was able to prep you a little bit, I guess, or
he was telling me all about St. Clair. St. Clair had some kind of like he called it a revival. I didn't really understand what that meant at that time. But they're just like kind of what happened to us in the Montgomery County Jail, where God just kind of breathed in, and like people were on fire and trying to figure it out. And he would tell me all about their chapel services and how they had tapes and books and all these things you could do. But then there was another thing that they had going on at St. Clair at that time, was they had like a for real like Bible college.
College?
They called it it wasn't like really a college. It was like a program.
Okay.
But you could go through Bible school at St. Clair.
Wow.
So I felt like I knew that was my next step.
Where was St. Clair exactly?
St. Clair is north of Birmingham. Is the one of 3 max camps in Alabama.
Birmingham, Alabama. Okay.
There's St. Clair, and then there's West Jefferson, which was west of Birmingham and Bessemer, and then there's Atmore, which is down towards Mobile, and it's like where they like execute people and stuff.
Okay.
But of the 3, St. Clair, I'd been told St. Clair's the best one to go to because it's a maximum security prison. People in there for like violent crimes, but it's not a violent prison.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Oh, and just side note, we have noted that
James wants to know a lot if it makes sense to me.
Well,
sense?
we go back through and listen to these podcasts, and I say a lot to her, does it make sense? And I'm trying to stop saying, does that make sense? Because we don't want to annoy y'all.
And because I'll tell him if it doesn't make sense. I mean, he knows that.
Well, part of that is I'm trying to explain a world to you that you don't understand.
That's very true.
It is very much like you trying to explain Sweden to me.
Right.
Like, I don't understand Sweden. That's on the other side of the planet. But you've explained, like, the culture and, you've taught me how to say gluten Morgan.
No, that's
good
not
morning.
how you say it.
How you say it?
Good moron.
Good moron?
I think I think you're speaking like Dutch or something when you say that, but it's not Swedish.
I have no reference for Dutch.
Jag kan prata lite svenska, and that's not it.
It fascinates me.
For all my Swedish listeners, I love you guys.
It fascinates me that you could live there for only 8 years and learn the language. That is so fast. Because I can never learn a language. I tried to learn Spanish when I was at VCI, when I had Cuban friends, and I got past, like... Que hora es? I think that means what time is it? Is that right? And then tú tienes hambre? That means are you hungry? And then I was like, okay, I'm an American. I can't learn another language. But anyways, he got me hyped up for that, and I was so excited for my next steps. I was going to St. Clair, and I was going to Bible college.
So that was happening next. So I mean, at this point, you've been there how long in the context of our conversation now? Like, how long have you been
about
there?
6 months.
Okay, which was way longer, you said, than
it was about 5 months.
You should have been there.
It was about 5 months and 2 weeks longer than I should have been there.
Okay, so you really were anticipating any day a move.
Yeah, my
to
transfer could be
St. Clair.
anytime.
St. Clair, yeah.
St. Clair. I was going to St. Clair. I slated, but a lot of that's like they don't transfer you until they get a bed for you, and it's just like. That whole thing's a complicated process. Yeah. And then I had all these other charges, which complicated even more. So it kind of made sense that I was there. But in hindsight, being at Kilby for 6 months for me was a gift.
Yeah.
It was a gift of time and space to learn and grow. And if I would have known what I was facing next, I would have really been embracing that process, because what was coming next was a nightmare that I never could have imagined what would come next.
Ooh, scary.
It was. So Eddie Foster got transferred about 2 weeks before I left, and I was very sad when he left because he had become like a friend and a mentor, and he was really helping me navigate through my new life. But he was gone. I was there. There were some experience. I had a lot of experiences with Jesus. I got experience my first Easter there, and it was where I kind of came up. Remember I told you about my first Christmas and how meaningful that was?
Yeah.
Well, I got to my first Easter, and my first Christmas was meaningful because Jesus made it meaningful. I tried to make my first Easter meaningful by doing something really stupid. Because, in the Christian world, Easter is that's the most holy day.
It's an important...
Well, it's because Jesus died on the cross, paid for our sins, and then he was buried for 3 days, and then he was resurrected on Sunday morning. That's the crux of Christianity. I don't even call myself Christian because actually in the Bible they didn't call themselves Christians. They call themselves. They said in the book of Acts, they said we belong to the way because Jesus is the way, the truth, and the life. It was other people starting to call them Christians later on.
You call yourself a Christian.
I mean, I am a Christian, but I'm not part of the Big C Christian. I'm a Jesus follower. That's who I am. I follow Jesus. This is so silly, looking back on it now, but I decided that for my first Easter, I was going to fast food and water for 3 days so I could experience what he experienced, some kind of suffering or whatever. And it was a bad decision, but I did it.
When you say fast, you mean you're not going to eat and you're not going to drink for 3 days?
I'm not going to eat food.
Nothing.
I'm not going to eat water for 3 days.
Yeah.
Bad decision, but I made up my mind as well as going to do. I am. If I decide I'm going to do something, I'm going to do it.
He's like, I'm going to suffer through it.
That was not a good decision, especially at that point. But I mean, I did it. But on the other side of that, it was I felt like Jesus taught me a lesson. I did this for you. You do not have to, you don't have to add to it. I did it. It's done. Just live and love it. And that was a big lesson during that time. This is not something I can earn. But it's you go back to, especially when you're wired like me, you want to be you want to add to it. You want to do something to feel worthy. And I just felt like he brought me back to, you can't do it. So just trust me. I did it. Let's go. I've got it. I've got you. I've got you covered. And then, right in the middle of all that, I'm rocking and rolling. I'm rocking and rolling. I'm leading people. It's amazing the things that I saw during that time. But then that came that morning when they said, Inmate Jones 190063. Pack it up. You're going to DOC. And so I was...
DOC, sorry, remind me.
DOC means Department of Corrections.
Okay.
That means I'm going to my permanent camp.
Okay.
So I was so excited. I got my stuff.
You were so excited.
I wrote it. I mean, I'm going to St. Clair. Haley, I'm going to Bible college. I mean, I don't care.
Yeah.
They say they're sending me to prison in a camp, but I'm going to Bible college. So
in your mind, you were like, yes.
I was so excited. Yeah. And I'm going to get to see Eddie Foster again because he's at St. Clair. And I packed up my stuff. I'm so full of hope, so excited. And I get down to where they transfer you out. They took all my stuff, get me ready. And I'll never forget this inmate. When they transfer you, they put all your stuff in a brown paper bag. And they write on your bag. And he had this big black marker. And I was so focused on him writing my name. And he wrote Jones 190063. And then he wrote the letters WDCF. And I had no idea. What does WDCF mean? I was so confused. And then there was a part of me, there was something in me that jumped and was like, maybe I'm going to one of those new programs they keep coming up with. But there was nothing about WDCF that you could get St. Clair into. And I was headed somewhere that I never thought I would be.
Oh, what a cliffhanger.
Well, tune in to season 2, episode 6.
Tell me the letters again.
WDCF.
WDCF.
And you know me, I study things. I need to know before we get there.
That's true.
And WDCF did not line up with anything.
Register, yeah.
Nothing.
Well, stay tuned because I want to know just as much as everyone else. So
here we go. It's time to go. It's time to do the next thing. Well, thank you guys so much for tuning in. We'll see you next week, and you'll find out what WDCF stands for.
Ooh. All right. Bye, guys.
But it's not good.
Bye.
Hey, guys. Thanks so much for tuning in to the Straight Outta Prison podcast. For more exclusive content, head over to our website, teamjones.co/podcast.
Yes, you can subscribe by clicking on the Become a Patron button, and that's going to get you access to our For Real Reel, which is very different than the Highlight Reel. Some very juicy content there.
Good stuff. Or you can look us up on Facebook and Instagram, Straight Outta Prison Podcast.
Yes, that takes the story to a whole new level where you can see some of the people that James talks about in his story and see some of the places that he's been. I've been loving it, and you will too. Prison
recipes.
Yeah, all the things.
Good stuff. We'll see you soon, guys.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye-bye. Anything out of these videos, please hit the like button, the subscribe. If you never want to miss a recipe or anything I do, hit the little bell and you'll get notifications.
Today, I made a chicken pot pie with my dad. I got vegetables.
Okay, you ready to put this top on this pot pie?
Yeah, now I'm going to decorate. This pie is looking good. Why do you have a paintbrush?
It's actually not a paintbrush. It's called a pastry brush.
I'm painting now. And I'm not painting a picture. I'm painting food.
All right, time for the verdict.
Yep. It tastes amazing. Follow my dad's YouTube channel for more. Say, baby. Wait, dinner, I thought I never make dinner.
Well, we'll make dinner together soon, okay? All right, Lula made that for your dinner. What do you think?
It's good.
It's good.
Happy
right.
birthday.
Okay, it's not your birthday, but Judah James, look at Daddy.
Mm-hmm.
Lula made you dinner. What do you think about it?
H-I-A-B-C-D-E-F-G-H-I-J-K.
So you just don't care?
Now I know my ABCs. That time of GC with me.